All right, let's jump right in. We're about to take a little journey into the world of data, and we're going to explore its incredible story, from the second it's created to the powerful insights it can give us.
So, there's a fun question for you. What could a butterfly possibly have in common with, say, a spreadsheet full of numbers? I know, it sounds a little weird, right? But the answer is actually pretty cool.
You got it. They both have a life story, a life cycle. Just like a butterfly goes through these really distinct stages, from an egg to a caterpillar to that chrysalis, and finally the butterfly, data has its own defined journey, from the moment it's born all the way to its end.
So over the next few minutes, we're going to follow that exact journey, what we call the data lifecycle. But just as important, we'll also look at how you, the analyst, become the storyteller using a different but related framework, the data analysis process.
First up, let's talk about the data lifecycle. I want you to think of this as the biography of the data itself. This is its story, and it happens completely on its own, whether an analyst like you ever looks at it or not. It's simply the path the data follows.
So this journey, it's usually broken down into 6 key stages. You've got plan, capture, manage, analyze, archive, and then finally, destroy. Each one is like a new chapter in the data's life. Let's make this feel a little more real with an example.
Okay, so picture this. An electricity company wants to help its customers save energy. So in the plan stage, they decide, okay, what information do we actually need to collect? Maybe things like energy use per hour, what kind of building it is, and what appliances are running.
Next up, they capture all that data, maybe from smart meters, and pull it into a big company database. And then comes the really crucial manage stage. This is all about taking care of that data, keeping it secure, making sure it's accurate, and of course, protecting customer privacy.
And now the data gets to shine. The company can analyze it to find patterns, then archive it for long-term records once the project is over. And eventually, and this is so important, they securely destroy it. We're talking shredding paper files and using special software to completely erase the digital copies to protect everyone's private info.
But, and this is super important, this life cycle isn't some rigid one-size-fits-all thing. Not at all. A government agency, for example, might be really focused on archiving historical data forever. A bank, on the other hand, will have unique stages like qualify and purge. The core idea is always the same, but the exact chapters of the story can change a lot depending on the industry.
Okay, so that's the data's journey. But where do you fit into all this? This is where we make a shift, from the data's life to the analyst's work. We're talking about the data analysis process. Think of this as your playbook, your guide for telling a really compelling story with that data.
And guess what? This playbook also has 6 phases: ask, prepare, process, analyze, share, and act. But remember, this isn't the data's life anymore. This is the step-by-step method you use to find and communicate what's hidden inside that data.
Let's switch gears with another example. Let's say you're looking at an employee engagement survey. First, you ask, what problem are we actually trying to solve here? You'll talk to managers and leaders to really define the goal. Then you prepare by getting your hands on all the right survey data.
Okay, now for the part that sounds a little tedious but is absolutely crucial. You process the data. And that means cleaning it up, you're fixing typos, getting rid of errors, just getting it all ready for the main event. Because only then can you analyze it, using your tools to find those hidden patterns and just let the data speak for itself, without any bias.
Okay, let's put these two side by side, because this is the key takeaway. The data lifecycle on the left, that's the data's passive journey. The analysis process on the right, that's your active set of steps. And see how analyze is in both? That's the magic spot, right? It's where your actions meet the data's life story. So remember, one is about the data itself, the other is about your work.
So to actually do all this work as an analyst, you can't just use your brain, right? You need the right tools. So let's take a look at the essential kit for any good data storyteller.
This reminds me of my own aha moment with this stuff. When I was just starting out, I figured out a few keyboard shortcuts in a spreadsheet, and it totally blew my mind. It made me realize these tools weren't just for storing stuff, they were for unlocking its potential. It was a real game changer.
The essential toolkit for any analyst today really boils down to 3 main things. You've got spreadsheets like Google Sheets or Excel, you've got query languages like SQL for talking to databases, and you've got visualization tools like Tableau or Looker to bring your findings to life.
So when do you pick a spreadsheet over a database?
Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. Spreadsheets are awesome for smaller chunks of data and when you're mostly working by yourself. But the second you're dealing with huge amounts of data that lots of people need to use at the same time, you absolutely need the power of a database.
The spreadsheet is really your foundational tool. It's basically a digital worksheet, and it's perfect for organizing information. But its real magic comes from formulas and functions that can do all sorts of complex calculations for you, automatically.
But what happens when your data gets way too big for a spreadsheet? Well, then you need to talk to a database. And the language you use for that conversation is SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language. It lets you ask really specific questions, we call them queries, to pull out the exact piece of information you need from a massive data set.
And finally, once you've used all these tools to actually find the story, you have to tell it to people. And let's be honest, nobody wants to look at a giant wall of numbers. That's where data visualization comes in. Turning all that complex data into a simple, clear chart or a map, well, it makes your insights instantly understandable. You can communicate a powerful finding in a single glance.
So, let's tie all of this together. We've seen the data's own life cycle, and we've walked through the analyst's process for telling its story. Now, it's really just about putting all that understanding into practice.
There's this quote that I just absolutely love because it really nails what our job is all about. Our job isn't to make up a story or to push an agenda. It's to be an objective amplifier, to let the data speak for itself and to tell its story as clearly and as honestly as we possibly can.
And that really just leaves one big, exciting question for you. As you start your own journey, just remember that every single data set out there has a story that's just waiting to be discovered. So, what story will yours tell?